Left alone in surgery for a beach party. Then the medical board revealed an incredible truth. Jenna stood in the sterile confines of the operating room. The familiar antiseptic scent mingled with the rising tide of fear swelling in her chest. Outside, laughter and music wafted through the salty air of Willow Bay, where her family had gathered for their beloved annual beach party, a vibrant tapestry of cherished memories that now felt tantalizingly out of reach. Yet here she was, clad in scrubs, heart racing as her hands gripped the scalpel. The stakes had never been higher. Today was her chance to prove herself, to transform from a mere intern into a surgeon capable of making precise, life-altering decisions. Each moment away from the party felt like a decision steeped in conflicting loyalties. Her heart longed to frolic in the sand, to share in the joy that had threaded through her childhood summers. But aspirations tugged at her, whispering insidiously that this was her moment to shine, to break the mold of self-doubt. In the initial moments of surgery, her focus sharpened. Every incision she made brought a fleeting rush of determination. Yet, as the rhythm of the procedure took its course, the pressure loomed, escalating like a tide about to crest. Then it happened. A sudden complication. Jenna's confidence momentarily faltered, her thoughts swirling with dark questions, spiraling into the chaos of the unknown. Did she have enough experience to navigate this crisis? Dr. Mitchell, her mentor since her very first day in the hospital, hovered at her side, reassurance in his practiced demeanor. But there was an unsettling undertone in the room as Jenna realized she was tethered to expectations that felt extraneous, both hers and his. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. Jenna's mind jumped from the operating room to the digital realm, where the chaos of online notifications played havoc. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Just as quickly, she was back in the surgery, the patient's vibrant hue fading to a ghostly pallor. Jenna felt buoyed momentarily by adrenaline, a surge of prowess coursing through her veins as her fingers deftly maneuvered, reining in the unexpected crisis. But when the patient stabilized, elation faded harshly as she observed Dr. Mitchell clasping his hands, exclaiming their triumph to the others while neglecting to acknowledge her contributions. The weight of betrayal slammed into her, igniting a fire within that raged against the very foundations of her identity. Would she always remain in the shadows of those who believed she was unworthy? Later, as a cacophony of voices filled the medical boardroom, Jenna sensed destiny brushing against her skin. The discussions turned to an old connection, a local legend entwined in her family history. She discovered her lineage with Dr. Sullivan, an iconic figure that had defined medicine in Willow Bay. Panic coursed through her as her identity unraveled. What if this legacy twisted into a chain binding her to expectations she never wanted? Jenna wrestled with each dawning truth, unsure if the flicker of hope she felt was genuine support or a mere reflection of those who too often sought to shape her path. This revelation paralyzed her thoughts, constricting her heart. The weight of tradition sat heavily upon her, looming darker than the summer storms outside. As she stood on the precipice of existential dread, she yearned to reclaim her narrative, a fight she was uncertain she could win. Hidden amongst her grandmother's belongings, a tattered letter could hold the key. But would it unlock a new chapter for Jenna and her dreams, or would it seal her fate? As her heart echoed with questions and fears, the future felt suspended, a taut string waiting to snap, leaving her to navigate the shifting sands of hope and ambition. Jenna stared at the crumpled letter wedged between dusty papers, a relic of her grandmother's past. Each crease seemed to throb with unspoken secrets, a time-worn invitation to explore a lineage she never asked for but felt tied to nonetheless. The moment she grasped the envelope, a spark ignited within her. She felt both invigorated and terrified. This could either illuminate her path or drown her further in expectations that suffocated her dreams. She gently unfolded the letter, her fingers trembling as she absorbed her grandmother's beautifully penned script. The words were laced with nostalgia, detailing her grandmother's early battles against societal norms, her journey through medical school, stories of resilience that felt foreign, yet intimately bound with Jenna's own struggles. With each sentence, Jenna's heart sank a little deeper. She recognized the patterns of conflict that tracked through generations. The courage to pursue a life of medicine was a legacy, but it came with fissures of doubt that bled through time, whispering that ambition had its price. "This isn't just about family history," she whispered to herself, as she read about her grandmother's experiences under the watchful eyes of male colleagues who dismissed her capabilities. Those reflections echoed issues Jenna dealt with daily, thoughts of inferiority creeping in even as she proved herself. How many times had Dr. Mitchell overlooked her contributions? Did those who claimed to support her even see her? With newfound determination, Jenna began to map out a plan. She would not let fear dictate her actions. The moment of realization struck. Understanding her family's legacy didn't mean becoming enslaved to it. Instead, she could wield it like a tool, leveraging the trials of her predecessors to carve her own destiny. No longer would she float in the shadows. She would illuminate her own path. The following day in the hospital, Jenna took every opportunity to assert her voice in discussions, offering her insight amidst the simmering tension of surgical rounds. When doubts surfaced, she met them head-on. One afternoon, as Dr. Mitchell prepared to navigate a challenging case, she stepped forward, proposing an innovative approach she had read about in recent journals. There was a sharpening in the air, a palpable moment as her colleagues looked on, eyebrows raised, assessing her audacity. "Jenna, that's ambitious," Dr. Mitchell responded cautiously. "Ambition isn't a crime, is it?" she replied, her voice steady but layered with determination. The pause that followed felt like a pendulum swinging in slow motion. Would he dismiss her forcefully, or could she turn this moment? It was no longer about hiding behind a mentor's guidance. It was about claiming her space at the table. As they moved forward with the case, Jenna felt a rush of exhilaration, embracing the realization that claiming her voice wasn't rebellion. It was an evolution of her identity. Every calculated decision enacted a defiance against the insinuations that held her back. However, amidst her rising assertiveness, Jenna felt a shadow looming. Despite the progress, whispers of doubt lingered. As she walked past the medical boardroom later that day, a chill ran down her spine. Dr. Mitchell and the board members were deliberating over the paths of interns, their expectant glances suggesting she was a topic of discussion. Pushing her fears aside, she approached, ready to confront whatever awaited her. But just as she reached the door, she caught a snippet of conversation that made her heart race. "Jenna is tied to the Sullivan legacy. We have to manage her expectations." Handle her expectations? Panic fluttered in her chest. Was this all about lineage, reducing her worth to the stories of her ancestors? She clenched her hands, a surge of rebellious energy pulsing through her. The air crackled with tension as Jenna prepared herself to step into the room, knowing that she was about to confront the very board that could either carve her identity or chain her to it. This was the moment she had been waiting for, yet the uncertainty gnawed at her. Was she ready to stake her claim and show them who Jenna Sullivan truly was? With the weight of destiny gripping her tightly, she opened the door, ready to face not just the board, but the echoes of her own fears. What awaited her on the other side could redefine everything. The boardroom was a stark contrast to the vibrant world Jenna had once imagined for herself, filled with laughter and camaraderie. Instead, the air hummed with tension, and she felt the weight of an unseen judgment pressing down as the door closed behind her. 4 pairs of eyes turned toward her, some skeptical, others curious. Jenna's heart raced as she scanned the room, the members, long-forgotten whispers, and her own turbulent thoughts flickering like an unsteady flame. "Jenna," Dr. Mitchell greeted, his voice measured. "Thank you for joining us." She stepped forward, grounding herself in the space. "I appreciate the opportunity," she managed, even as her confidence wavered. Part of her wanted to flee, to retreat behind some protective veil of heritage, but that wasn't who she was anymore. Speaking up wasn't just an act of defiance, it was an assertion of her right to exist in this world, no longer as a shadow of her lineage, but as Jenna Sullivan. "We were discussing the prospects for our residents moving forward," Dr. Mitchell continued. "Given your family connection, we're considering how best to foster your development." The phrase sent tremors of indignation coursing through her. A connection? Did they really believe her worth was tied solely to her name? She felt compelled to challenge their assumptions. "While I appreciate the sentiments surrounding my background, I believe my progress should be based on competency, not ancestry." There was a ripple of surprise among the board members. Jenna leaned in, driven by an urgent need to reshape their perceptions. "My grandmother's legacy shaped my aspirations, but my potential is determined by my actions. I'm committed to proving myself here, not just living up to a reputation." Dr. Mitchell narrowed his gaze, weighing her unwavering demeanor. "You realize these conversations could dramatically affect your career path? We are looking to manage expectations carefully. Some might argue you have big shoes to fill." "How about I fill my own shoes?" The words slipped out before she could pull them back. Determination surged in her veins, but she realized how easily that bravado could tip into recklessness. Taking a moment to rein in her temper, she added, "I'm more than a legacy, and I want the chance to contribute on my own merit. Challenge me, and I will rise to it." For a breathless moment, silence enveloped the room, and Jenna could feel the dynamic shifting. This was more about her own self-discovery than a mere defense against committee opinion. It was the essence of her resolve. She was stepping into the light, and for the first time, she wasn't terrified. Rather, she was exhilarated by the unknown that lay ahead. Dr. Mitchell rifled through the documents in front of him, consulting notes as they pondered her declaration. She could feel their skepticism, like a heavy fog in the air, still thin enough to see through it to their glances, doubt mingling with intrigue. "Very well," he said finally, his voice a mixture of caution and respect. "You will be evaluated on the same criteria as everyone else moving forward. Your challenges will be the same, but we'll be watching closely." That small concession felt monumental, and Jenna dared to breathe. Yet the journey was only beginning. The conversation had peeled back layers, yet left her most buried doubts evolving, now active, demanding acknowledgement. She was aware that a raw vulnerability lurked beneath her bravado. The joy of her own voice was already tainted by the fear of what might follow. As Jenna exited the boardroom, a crowd of thoughts spiraled in her mind, a kaleidoscope of ambition and fear. The other interns were bustling in the hallway, laughter echoing as though mocking her serious resolve. They were all blissfully unaware of the subtle battles unfolding around them, while Jenna fought against a tide of expectations far removed from their world. What had begun as a confrontation with the board had become an inner struggle, exposing layers of confidence that still needed building. As she walked toward the surgical wards, a deeper understanding arose. Her past was a foundation, not a prison. She could construct her own narrative. Yet, doubts still tugged at her. Were they right to manage her expectations? What if she couldn't live up to the newly created benchmarks? Just then, one of her supportive colleagues approached, an unexpected ally amid the uncertainty. "Hey, Jenna," he said, catching up. "I heard what you did in there. It was bold, refreshing even. You're making a big splash." The buoyancy of his praise flickered something in her. Perhaps this was the wind she needed to navigate uncharted waters, but doubt still whispered around the edges of her burgeoning confidence. She wasn't just fighting the board anymore. She was confronting inner fears that had followed her for far too long. As she moved toward the operating room, ready to embrace another day of demanding work. One question loomed larger than the rest. Could she truly forge an identity based on her own actions? Time would tell, but the depth of her determination could either light the way or overshadow her path entirely. She pressed on, eager to see more of what she was capable of. Little did she know, the revelation of a long-hidden truth about her grandmother's past awaited, ready to alter the course of her journey yet again. Jenna stood outside the operating room, the sterile environment a stark reminder of the gravity of the tasks ahead. The vibrant chatter of her colleagues faded as she focused on her breathing, grounding herself in the present moment. Each day was a new opportunity to redefine herself, and the stakes felt unprecedented. She scanned the surgical team bustling about, each absorbed in their duties, the gravity of their responsibilities palpable. The intern beside her, Emily, offered a quick smile. "You ready for this?" she asked, slipping on her gloves. "Ready as I'll ever be," Jenna replied, a thin veneer of enthusiasm draping over her trepidation. Her facade was cracking, revealing the tumult beneath. In the midst of all these skilled professionals, was she even competent enough to belong? As the operation began, Jenna watched intently. The surgeons moved with precision, their teamwork fluid yet dynamic. The surgical field transformed before her eyes, layers of anatomy revealing not just the physical, but the intricate interdependencies that defined human life. It was mesmerizing and terrifying all at once. The rhythm of the procedure resonated with her, and yet she felt tethered to her previous failures, unable to fully immerse herself. Then, the unexpected came. Jenna's mentor, Dr. Lee, let out a sharp command. "Jenna, I need you to step in for sutures. We're running out of time." Stunned, she hesitated for a moment, the weight of her incredulity crashing against the walls of her self-doubt. The board's words echoed, managing expectations carefully. Was this a test? Her heartbeat quickened, and for a split second she considered retreating. But then she recalled their agreement. She was no longer merely the granddaughter. And she was Jenna Sullivan, capable and determined. Got it! She stepped forward, her motivation ignited by a sudden wave of clarity. The tools in her hands felt heavy, but Jenna gripped them firmly, recalling the drills and procedures she'd practiced. As her hands moved, they adapted to the motions, driven by years of patients' voices whispering encouragement from distant memories. The sutures slipped through her fingers seamlessly as she wound them together, but the sense of pride was dampened by an insistent voice in her head. What if she messed up? What if they regretted putting her forward? But at that moment, she shut it down. Each stitch held significance, not just structural, but also symbolic. She was weaving her own identity with every pull of the thread. "Perfect," Dr. Lee said, his eyes reflecting approval. It was a small victory, but it fueled a deep-seated fire within her. Jenna could see the awareness among her peers shift, the respect in their gazes warming the atmosphere she had previously felt so distanced from. As the operation concluded, Jenna stepped back, adrenaline coursing through her. The response of her colleagues filled her with a heady mixture of pride and lingering doubt. While their praises washed over her, the nagging thought snaked through. Could she replicate this in another procedure, or was this merely a fluke? Making her way to the break room, she pondered her recent success and the gnawing fear that accompanied it. Was this just the beginning of a deeper self-discovery, or would her past haunt the choices she made moving forward? She sat quietly, grappling with the duality of her exhilaration and vulnerability. An unexpected knock on the door startled her back to reality. It was Dr. Mitchell, his expression serious yet softened by an undercurrent of curiosity. "Jenna, I need a moment. There's something we should discuss. It's about your grandmother." A chill danced down her spine. What now? The world of her legacy had been brushed against, the whispers of her lineage now almost tangible. Did they have more to reveal? As she followed him down the corridor, a surge of trepidation mixed with anticipation coursed through her. Was the stunning revelation looming just beyond her reach? Reinventing herself, hadn't just opened doors. It might also unlock secrets that could dismantle her understanding of family and purpose altogether. As Jenna trailed Dr. Mitchell down the bustling corridor, the sterile scent of antiseptic wafted through the air, mingling with her apprehension. Each step felt heavier, the tension thickening as they approached the conference room. Her thoughts spun in a chaotic dance, wandering from the exhilarating success of the operation to the impending confrontation regarding her grandmother. Dr. Mitchell opened the door, gesturing for Jenna to enter first. The room was dimly lit, the flicker of fluorescent lights casting an unsettling aura. Taking a deep breath, Jenna stepped inside, her heart thrumming against her ribs. Several familiar faces were seated around the table, each one varying from stoic to inquisitive. Their expressions shifted as Jenna sat down, and for a moment she felt more like a subject of scrutiny rather than a participant in the discussion. "Thank you for joining us, Jenna," Dr. Mitchell began, hesitating for a brief second, as if choosing his words carefully. "I called you here to talk about your recent performance. Some of us were concerned about your previous struggles, but honestly, after today, it's evident you possess potential. There's something we need to address that transcends your immediate skills." Jenna's stomach knotted. Potential often felt like a precarious pedestal, easily toppled by a single misstep. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Mitchell exchanged glances with the others before continuing. "Jenna, your grandmother was a distinguished surgeon, renowned not just for her skills, but for her approach towards mentorship and innovation in medicine. What you demonstrated today, your tenacity and determination, echoes her legacy. We believe this is an opportunity for you to step into a role she'll be proud of." Recognition washed over Jenna. Memories of her grandmother flooded her mind. The enthusiastic discussions about medical cases, the heartfelt counseling during family gatherings, and the spirit of resilience that had always been a guiding light. Yet she felt a heaviness settle in her chest, as though the weight of the family's legacy had intensified overnight. "I appreciate the support, but I'm still learning. How am I supposed to live up to that?" The doubt spilled out, unguarded. Dr. Mitchell leaned forward, intent on her face. "You're not meant to replicate her. You're meant to build upon what she started. We want you to take on more responsibilities, possibly lead a project on surgical techniques where you can innovate and put forth the new ideas you've been developing." A mix of exhilaration and fear surged through Jenna. This was the chance she had sought, a chance to forge her own path in medicine, but it carried the weight of expectation. "What if I fail?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if—" "Then you'll learn," Dr. Mitchell interjected, a reassuring firmness to his tone. "Every successful surgeon has faced failure. It's how you rise from it that shapes your journey. This is an opportunity, not just a burden." Jenna absorbed this for a moment, contemplating the implications. Her hands clenched into fists as the reality of her choices struck her. She could either succumb to the fears that haunted her or rise to this challenge. An internal battle commenced, the instinct to shy away warring with the burning desire to prove herself. Silence enveloped the room, thick with unspoken thoughts. Finally, Jenna nodded slowly, the resolve forming within her. "I'll do it," she affirmed, surprised by the strength of her own declaration. "I want to lead that project. I want to find my voice in this field." Dr. Mitchell's expression softened, and a sense of camaraderie filled the room. "Good. We believe in your potential, Jenna." But as she left the conference room, that same voice echoed in her mind, the nagging thoughts of inadequacy mingling with her budding confidence. This was not just a test of skill. It felt like a confrontation with her identity. How would she navigate the complexities of legacy, expectation, and self-discovery? The hall's fluorescent lights flickered again, casting long shadows across the floor. Jenna knew the road ahead was fraught with challenges, but she also understood that every step forward was one less burden to bear. With renewed determination, She headed towards her next challenge, ready to confront whatever lay waiting. What she didn't anticipate was how this journey could expose deeper secrets about her grandmother, truths that might challenge everything Jenna thought she knew about her family. Jenna's mind raced as she navigated the labyrinthine halls of the hospital. Every face she passed was a reminder of the legacy she was about to embrace. Her grandmother's shadow loomed large, whispering doubts that seeped into her resolve. Determination clashed with insecurity. She had asserted her willingness to lead, but could she truly command respect? In her small office, Jenna sat at her desk with scattered papers and surgical reports from her recent operations. They served as a tangible testament to her work. She glanced at the clock. You either prepared meticulously or perished in the frantic chaos of the unexpected. Her fingers brushed over the pages, searching for the hidden insights she desperately needed to bolster her confidence. But the words blurred, and her thoughts spiraled. Pulling out her phone, Jenna scrolled through saved messages from her grandmother, each one brimming with wisdom and encouragement. Medicine is about learning from mistakes, my dear. It's about growing stronger with each challenge. This time, however, her grandmother's reassuring words felt like pressure rather than solace. But what if she didn't measure up to the legacy? What if her innovations fell flat? Fear bubbled within her again, reminding her of her earlier self-doubt, threatening to drown out that flicker of confidence she had so astutely grasped. "Focus, Jenna," she muttered to herself. The corridors of the hospital were not just echoing with expectations, they were filled with the potential for discovery and innovation. This project could define her career. It could shift her trajectory, not only as a surgeon, but as a visionary who honors her lineage while crafting her path. Time to strategize. Jenna opened her laptop, the screen illuminating her determined expression. She poured herself into research on the latest surgical techniques, clashing them against the protocols her grandmother had advocated. Her plan began to take shape. She would grab legacy by the horns, melding tradition with her insights. Days stretched into weeks as Jenna garnered insights, refining her approaches and collaborating with colleagues. Some were supportive, but others questioned her authority, whispering skepticism about a young surgeon attempting to innovate. At one point, a particularly brash resident named Adam had the audacity to confront her directly. He leaned against the doorframe with a taunting smirk and said, "You think you can just redefine the game? You're riding the coattails of your grandmother's name, nothing more." Pain surged through her, but she felt a fire ignite her spirit. "Watch me," Jenna replied, her tone steady, surprising herself with the calm conviction that had replaced her earlier self-doubt. Each encounter with opposition sharpened her focus, forcing her to dig deeper, to question not just her abilities, but her motivations. What did she truly want? Recognition? Respect? Or perhaps to rediscover the voice she'd kept muted for too long? The answers were tucked behind the layers of fear she was peeling away in this process of personal evolution. Yet Jenna sensed the stakes rising. Her grandmother's legacy was tied to the project in ways she hadn't anticipated. Conversations with colleagues, half-veiled in whispers, suggested there were stories about her grandmother that Jenna was now unearthing. Stories that could reshape everything she thought she knew about her family's history and their approach to medicine. As Jenna pored over her drafts for the project proposal, unease settled in. What details lay obscured in the shadows of her grandmother's past, waiting to be revealed? Details that might not just clarify her own path, but threaten to dismantle the carefully constructed image she'd idolized for so long. The tension hung heavy in the air as Jenna prepared for her next steps. She would address these challenges head-on, venturing into the unknown, determined to forge a narrative that was as much about discovery as it was about innovation. The moment came when Jenna received a cryptic email from an esteemed mentor, a name from her grandmother's past, perhaps someone who could shed light on the truths that lurked in her grandmother's history. This was a thread she could follow, one that could unravel an entirely new understanding of herself and her legacy. Now faced with choices that could affect not only her career but her family's history, Jenna realized she stood at a crossroads. What she thought she would uncover was just the tip of a much larger existence, as secrets began to surface that would redefine everything she believed. What was the truth hidden within the legacy she'd inherited, and how would that truth reshape her own narrative? Jenna stared at her laptop screen, the flickering cursor captivating her, yet her thoughts drifted far from the task at hand. The cryptic email from her grandmother's former colleague loomed over her like a specter. It was an invitation to uncover truths that had long settled in the dust of unspoken family history. A chance to bridge her grandmother's legacy with her own aspirations. But that voice of doubt returned, a reminder of the skepticism she'd continually faced. She fought against the urge to procrastinate, acknowledging the weight of her decision. To meet this mentor, Dr. Victor Albright, would mean stepping into a past she had not fully understood and could potentially shatter the image of the flawless legacy she cherished. What if the truth exposed something unsavory about the woman she idolized? With a deep breath, Jenna hit reply and arranged a meeting for the following week. But a sense of urgency gripped her. She couldn't afford to enter that conversation unprepared. She needed to build a solid foundation that allowed her to pivot gracefully through any revelation. Her nights turned restless as she buried herself again in surgical protocols and treatment modalities. The days leading up to the meeting were characterized by an exhilarating frenzy. Jenna immersed herself in research and reached out to trusted mentors in the field for additional perspectives on her grandmother's practices. Every conversation opened new windows into her lineage. For the first time, Jenna was not just a passive inheritor of her grandmother's legacy, but an active participant in reformulating it. Yet, the deeper she dove, the more she realized the complexity of the woman who had come before her. Dr. Albright mentioned cases from decades ago, encounters with patients, ethical dilemmas, and decisions that had shaped her grandmother's reputation. Each revelation added layers. Her grandmother had made sacrifices Jenna had never considered, walking the fine line between innovation and tradition. On the eve of her meeting, Jenna fell into a paralysis of doubt. What if she learned that her grandmother's methods, viewed as revolutionary at the time, were tinged with controversy, or worse, malpractice? Did she possess the emotional resilience to process whatever Dr. Albright revealed? Flexibility and adaptability had never been her strong points. She had always prided herself on being structured and meticulous. Jenna spent hours staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with imagined scenarios. Could the weight of any unsavory truths alter the way her colleagues viewed her? Would tainted legacy overshadow her own accomplishments, erase her innovative ideas, and send her back into the shadows of self-doubt? Come dawn, Jenna's resolve began to solidify. She recognized what was at stake, not just her career, but her identity. Every surgeon carved their own path from the raw materials left by those who preceded them. Her grandmother's story was only one component of who Jenna was. She would not allow herself to become paralyzed by the shadows of the past. The clock ticked relentlessly on the morning of her meeting, and she steeled herself as she walked into the cafe where Dr. Albright had suggested they meet. The atmosphere buzzed faintly, with the chatter of patients thanking nurses and families waiting for news. Jenna claimed a table in the corner, her pulse thumping heavily in her ears as she mentally prepared for the conversation ahead. And then came Dr. Albright, his presence both commanding and reassuring. They exchanged pleasantries, yet Jenna felt the underlying tension build as they settled into conversation. "Your grandmother was ahead of her time," he began. And Jenna leaned in closer, eager to learn but dreading the possible implications. His words washed over her like cool water, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that history was about to reshape her understanding, one statement at a time. "I imagine you know of her innovations, but what many don't realize is that her methods came with severe trade-offs." As the layers unfurled, Jenna's heart raced. She sensed that these revelations could shift her perception not only of her grandmother, but of herself. What price would she pay for the truth hidden in the fabric of her family's legacy? The words hung in the air like a fragile glass ornament, ready to shatter at the slightest tremor. Jenna's fingers curled around her coffee cup, grounding herself against the maelstrom of swirling thoughts. Dr. Albright's expression was stoic, but beneath the surface burned a hint of something. Concern, perhaps? As he continued to unravel her grandmother's past, Jenna felt the ground beneath her shift. "Your grandmother's innovations," he said, "often came at the cost of patient trust. Some viewed her methods as reckless, even dangerous." A tight knot formed in Jenna's stomach. The notion that her grandmother had risked lives gnawed at the very essence of what she had built her admiration upon. Was this the truth she had sought so desperately to uncover? Feeling overwhelmed, Jenna pressed a deep breath into her lungs. "Dr. Albright, how do you reconcile her impact with the potential harm she may have caused? Was it worth it?" The question spilled from her lips before she could cage it, revealing the pent-up fears that had dwelled within her as a surgeon in her own right. Dr. Albright paused, his eyes focusing intently on her. "That is the perpetual dilemma in our field. We are bound by an obligation to innovate and heal, yet the shadows of our choices can linger long after the applause fades." What he suggested struck a nerve. Jenna understood this plight all too well. She had tried to emulate her grandmother's strengths, yet only now did she see the weight of her potential blind spots. Could she be, capable of making similar choices? The prospect terrified her. "I want to honor her legacy," Jenna admitted, her voice firming. "But how can I do that if it's built on controversial foundations?" Dr. Albright shifted in his seat, measuring his words. "Legacies are complex, Jenna. They include both triumph and failure. The essential task lies in what you choose to carry forward. Innovation cannot exist without a willingness to challenge norms, but it must also be balanced with ethical consideration." Her heart thudded against her ribs as the depth of his statement resonated within her. What would she, a successful young surgeon, stand for if not measured against the legacy she was now dissecting? This was the moment she needed to define herself, but clarity remained elusive, tangled within the revelations that swirled around her. Jenna focused on the cafe's atmosphere, the soothing sounds of conversation mingling with the rush of coffee machines. It helped to steady her racing thoughts, providing a temporary respite from the internal storm. She had come in search of answers, yet here was a new landscape of questions forming before her, offering the allure of personal growth wrapped in uncertainty. "I see, Dr. Albright," she replied softly, letting the gravity of his insights linger. "I need to understand her sacrifices, not just as accolades, but what they inherently cost her and those she influenced." "Yes," he nodded, satisfaction lining his expression. "You are stepping beyond mere succession. You are readying yourself to question, to evolve, not just as a surgeon, but as a steward of your grandmother's legacy." As Jenna shifted in her seat, a newfound determination blossomed within her. She wasn't merely the descendant burdened with the past. She was a creator of the future, her own future. The challenge lay not only in learning from her grandmother's mistakes, but also in making her decisions, cultivating her ethical compass. "I need to dive deeper into her practice," Jenna resolved, "to understand the full scope of her impact, both positive and negative. Perhaps it's time I uncover the harder truths, and also those who felt wronged along the way." An admirable pursuit, Jenna, but be advised, confronting truth has its costs. His words hung in the air, both a warning and a call to action. Jenna felt the stakes rising as she prepared to navigate this convoluted path. What revelations awaited her as she uncovered the stories of those affected by her grandmother's choices? Each truth could potentially reshape her understanding of her own identity as a surgeon. With a newfound sense of purpose, Jenna recognized the direction she had to take. She was no longer an innocent bystander. She was a scholar of history, stepping boldly into the uncharted territories of her lineage. But as shadows of uncertainty loomed large, a more ominous question whispered beneath the surface. Could understanding the past provide clarity, or would it threaten to dismantle the very foundation of who she aspired to be? The clock on the cafe wall ticked ominously as time unfurled before her. She sensed that the next steps she took could redefine the trajectory of her career. The time had come to face fears and embrace the intricate legacy woven into her very being. The following week, Jenna found herself standing in the quiet rows of a hospital archive, the scent of musty papers and antiseptic filling the air. Surrounding her were volumes of her grandmother's work, reports, and handwritten notes that had shaped the landscape of surgery, as well as the lives of countless patients. Each page she flipped opened a new layer of conflicts, solutions, and unfiltered realities. It was a delicate balance between admiration and horror as she unearthed practices that had genuinely saved lives alongside those that left scars deeper than the skin. Jenna studied her grandmother's method through meticulous case reports where innovation danced on the edge of recklessness. Her resolve to forge a similar path felt both invigorating and dreadfully intimidating. As she pored over a particularly controversial procedure, a chill crept up her spine. This was the moment she had been warning herself about, the confrontation of not just her grandmother's legacy, but her moral compass. What made a procedure actionable if it disrupted the very essence of trust in the doctor-patient relationship? Noticing a neglected file tucked between two larger binders, Jenna pulled it free. It was marked Patient Feedback. Weighing the decision of whether to peer into the hearts of those affected, she hesitated for a moment. Inside were letters from patients expressing profound gratitude intertwined with accusations of negligence. Each sentiment tore at her heart, leaving her breathless. These were survivors, and those who had not made it. "God, what did you do, Grandma?" Jenna whispered, her voice lost in the silence of the archive. The conflict grew within her, a burdensome knot forming. Could she ever embrace the legacy of a woman who had entwined innovation with risk? The challenge ahead was steep. She needed to confront her grandmother's choices and the voices of those impacted by them. Pushing through the turbulence of emotion, Jenna began to formulate her strategy. She would reach out to living patients and families who had undergone her grandmother's procedures, seeking to understand their experience. The mere thought fueled her determination. She needed to find balance between innovation and responsibility. The thought of being in their shoes gave her courage. They were standing up for their truths. She would do the same, albeit from another side. The decision brought clarity amidst her swirling thoughts, yet a new impulse emerged, one born from a defiant sense of accountability. Her grandmother had pushed boundaries. Could Jenna align that ambition with a new ethical framework? She circled the idea in her mind like a hawk tracing its prey, torn between liberation and burden. Hours flew by as she meticulously crafted a plan, her hands shaking with anticipation and fear. She had to approach this with sensitivity but vigor. She would be diving into raw emotions and fragility. Jenna sensed that this undertaking could either revive her sense of purpose or drown her in guilt. In need of a confidant, she called Adam, her closest colleague, who combined compassion with a rational approach. As she shared her intention, words flowed rapidly, detailing the necessity of empathy in medical practice. "It's not just about the surgery anymore, Adam. I have to confront the implications of my grandmother's decisions. If I believe in honest healing, I need to be part of this dialogue." His response, laced with support, steeled her focus. "You're stepping into uncharted waters, Jenna. Just remember that each story will add layers. Don't lose yourself chasing the right narrative." Taking one final look at the archive as she left, Jenna felt the weight of her responsibility shift, igniting a sense of urgency. She would reach out to those willing to share their truths. In unraveling her grandmother's legacy, perhaps she could stitch together a new path that would honor the past while safeguarding the future. Back in her car, she gripped the steering wheel, taking a deep breath as she prepared for the emotional journey ahead. Who would she meet? What stories awaited her that could redefine her view of surgery? In the moments of silence that followed, the internal questions multiplied. Each conversation could grant her insight or lead to agonizing revelations. Would she discover the clarity she sought, or would the burdens of her grandmother's choices weigh too heavily upon her? As Jenna pulled out of the parking lot, her heart pounded with questions and possibilities, steering toward the unpredictable road that lay ahead. She could feel the shift in her core. Her search was not merely for understanding, but for alignment with her own burgeoning ethics as a surgeon. The moment arrived. She was about to confront an unknown truth that would fracture her world further or bind it back together. Who could have predicted that in seeking to understand her grandmother's past, she would encounter herself? Jenna sat at the worn wooden table, her fingers tracing the edges of the file containing patient letters and feedback from her grandmother's career. The air was thick with anticipation. Each unturned page felt like a connection to a past she was slowly unraveling, emotions tangled within her, fear, determination, and an insatiable curiosity. She was no longer merely Jenna Sullivan, the nervous intern. She was a surgeon on a mission to understand the legacy of medical innovation interspersed with peril. In the following days, Jenna reached out to several patients and families willing to share their experiences. She navigated through layers of sorrow and gratitude, their testimonies flowing like a river of honesty. Each encounter offered new insights, stories of lives saved and lives forever altered. Such complexity challenged her resolve and deepened her understanding. It also ignited a fierce desire to redefine what surgery meant to her, not just as a series of technical skills, but as a profound interplay of ethics and humanity. Trust bloomed in the conversations she held. As she absorbed their perspectives, Jenna found herself standing at a crossroads, grappling with questions that pushed the boundaries of her ambition. Could she continue her grandmother's legacy while also addressing its shadows? Jenna realized she had the power to cultivate a future rooted in empathy, where surgical innovation harmonized with patient safety and trust. Weeks later, cloaked in uncertainty yet emboldened, Jenna prepared for her grand presentation to the medical board, detailing her research project aligned with the ethical standards she hoped to instill in surgical practice. Standing confidently at the front of the boardroom, she gazed at the faces of her colleagues, Dr. Mitchell among them, and felt a wave of clarity wash over her. Today, I stand before you not just as Jenna Sullivan, a surgeon in training, but as someone who has delved deeply into what it means to carry a legacy, she began, her voice steady. Through conversations with patients impacted by my grandmother's techniques, I've learned that innovation must coexist with unwavering adherence to ethics and patient care. The board members shifted, attention riveted on her passion. Jenna laid out plans for a new approach to surgical methodologies, one that encompassed not just technique, but the stories, histories, and identities of those being treated. She proposed implementing patient feedback in surgical planning and actively involving them in discussions around their procedures. It was not merely a departure from traditional methods, it was a leap towards creating meaningful conversations that held the potential to improve lives. As the presentation unfolded, Jenna experienced an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. She was no longer hiding in the shadows. She was manifesting her individuality, melding past with a promising future. Dr. Mitchell leaned forward, a glimmer of approval brightening his expression. "Jenna, we've discussed the imperative need for ethics in medicine," he acknowledged, nodding slowly. "To hear you put patient voices at the forefront shows immense growth. You exemplify the evolution we've hoped to see in our fields." Jenna's heart swelled with recognition. This was the culmination of her hard work, the willingness to confront her fears, and the embrace of her identity as a surgeon. At that moment, she could feel every choice she'd made leading to this realization. She had transformed into someone capable, unique, and resilient. Weeks turned into months, and as Jenna implemented her new strategies, patient trust flourished. The boards experienced a significant shift, echoing with how she bridged the gap between innovative practices and compassionate care. Colleagues lauded her approaches, some even mentioning her grandmother's legacy in more nuanced, appreciative tones. One afternoon, after an intense day in the OR, Jenna returned home where her grandmother's photo hung prominently in the living room. As she picked it up, holding it close, there was no longer a choking sense of obligation or fear. There was gratitude. Jenna had learned to honor her grandmother not by unconditionally emulating her, but by understanding and challenging what had come before. "I am you, Grandma," she whispered softly, her voice steady now. "But I am also myself." The reflections of her journey shimmered as she hung the photo back on the wall, feeling an affirmation within her chest. She had achieved what so many seek, but few truly attain: the profound resolution of self-identity. Jenna Sullivan had arrived, not just as a granddaughter burdened by legacy, but as a surgeon ready to reshape the narrative. She had transformed her fears into tangible achievements and had demonstrated that choices built on understanding could indeed elevate her practice and redefine what it meant to be a healer. It was a powerful testament to her growth, and one that she would carry forward, not curtailing her dreams in the shadows, but ushering in light and integrity. Now, as she stood poised at the cusp of a new chapter, Jenna understood that the journey was just beginning. A synthesis of innovation, ethics, and empowered voices, Jenna was ready to etch her own legacy into the annals of medicine. To the audience following her triumph, Jenna had a clear message. Embrace your story, challenge norms, and pave your path. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to the channel and not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and shout your appreciation. Comment your reactions and theories about this transforming conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring journey. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.